Welcome to episode 96 of the Unstoppable Podcast. This is a special episode for International Podcast Day. My name is Dan J. Gregory, and I am committed to hunting down the secrets of business mastery and human performance. My goal for the Unstoppable Podcast is to share insights from some of the most successful entrepreneurs, inspiring thought leaders, world-class athletes, and prominent celebrities to help you to become unstoppable in business and life. Each week I'll be bringing you a new interview with an inspiring person and sharing my own results as I pursue the answers to the question, how can I create the ultimate edge in my business, make a significant impact, and live an extraordinary life? Welcome to this very special edition of the Unstoppable Podcast. I'm podcasting live today in celebration of International Podcasting Day. So for the last few years, on the 30th of September, it has been the International Podcast Day, and it's really designed to raise awareness of podcasting as a medium, to celebrate all the great shows that are out there, to recognize all the people who are listeners and audience members who listen to all the great podcasts that are out there in the marketplace, and to encourage other people to start their own podcasts. So my session this morning live here is to talk about why this year is the year to start your own podcast for your business. So this is a live podcast episode. I've got my mic here. This will be going out on iTunes later on in the week, but you'll have the pleasure here on Facebook Live. Thank you for joining me. For the listeners, hello, Carol Ann. Welcome to the show. We will have an interactive session today. So those of you listening on iTunes or your favorite podcasting platform, you will have some audience participation. We're going to keep this quite short, 20 to 30 minutes. And I'm really excited to share some of what I believe to be the top reasons to start your own show this year. So I want to give you the opportunity to ask questions as well. So if you're considering starting your own show, I'd love to handle those questions for you. But I'll be sharing 10 of the reasons that I believe this year is the best year to start a podcast. And I've got some compelling reasons for you, hopefully. So today, as I said, is the International Podcasting Day. My client and good friend, Deborah Mendez, are running a campaign today where we're sharing a podcast share-a-thon. And what we're encouraging everyone to do, it's the first ever podcast share-a-thon. We want people to share on their Facebook timelines, on Twitter, on Instagram, all of your social platforms, to share your favorite podcasts that you personally listen to. There's some absolutely fantastic podcasts out there in every different niche and genre, from business to health to entertainment, comedy, whatever kind of content you like to consume. There is something out there for you. And if you've yet to discover podcasting as a listener, then I would love to share with you how to do that. And I'll be showing you on the Facebook, on the iTunes, how to access the podcasting app, so you can listen to podcasts yourself. Just the other day, I went for a coffee with a good friend of mine. He'd never heard of podcasting, so I took out my phone, I showed him the app, and he's an avid personal development fan. Listens and reads all kinds of great stuff, and I showed him how he could access this world of opportunity to listen and learn to some great speakers out there using podcasting. So if you're new to podcasting as a listener, you're in for a treat. There is so much good stuff out there. So International Podcast Day, if you're just joining, is all about celebrating the great work that podcasters are doing to entertain and educate and inform their audiences about various different subject matters out there. And we really want to be encouraging more and more people to be listening to podcasts. I'll be talking about the kind of stats and the growth in the market as we go through the top 10 reasons to start a podcast this year. But it's a really exciting time, not only to be a listener to the podcasts due to innovation in the marketplace, but also as a podcast host. It's an incredible time to start a podcast. If you're a business owner, a small business owner, you have your own brand or personal brand, podcasting is such a great medium to share your message, to share your views, to share your philosophy, and to really reach a new audience. And I'll be talking about how you can do that very shortly. So we're celebrating International Podcast Day today. I encourage you to take part in these celebrations by sharing your favorite podcasts on your social media timelines. If you haven't listened to the Unstoppable Podcast, a little shout out to myself. I host the Unstoppable Podcast. I've had the podcast now for just over 12 months, reached over 100,000 people in that time. I've had the pleasure of interviewing close to 100 people now. We're just approaching the 100th episode on the podcast. Be launching season 2 very, very shortly in October. So it's been a great journey for me, and I'll share a little bit about that as we go through the top 10 reasons to start a show. But yep, the goal for today is to get out there and share your favorite podcasts and help us to raise awareness to other people. Create some curiosity and intrigue from those people who are not yet podcast listeners. And there's a lot of people out there who have yet to discover the platform. So please do join us in sharing your favorite podcasts on your platforms that you listen If you want to join the thread that I've started on Facebook, you can go to my personal page where this video is being shot from, and I've put a post on there. You can contribute in the discussion as well. So hope you'll join us on the podcast share-a-thon today in celebration of International Podcast Day. But now I'm going to get into the top 10 reasons to start a podcast this year in 2017. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but Monday is the 2nd of October. And what that represents is 90 days to the end of the year, 90 days to the 31st of December. So it's the final quarter. It's time to make an impact. And if you're looking to make a big impact in your business in the next 90 days, like I am, I'm really going to be upping the ante in the next quarter, the final 90 days of the year, making the rest of 2017 count. Podcasting is a great way for you to do that. So here's my top 10 reasons why it's a great time to start a podcast. The top 10 reasons to start a show before the end of 2017. You got 90 days to do it. And, when I started my show, it took me nearly 4 months to go live. But I'll be sharing by the end of this session how you can reduce that down to less than 4 weeks. So if you're intrigued and, hopefully pique your interest through this live podcast about why you should start a podcast and you're interested in doing one for yourself, then I'll be sharing how I can help you to do that. So let's get into it. The top 10 reasons. These are in no particular order. I just put these together this morning based upon my own views on what's happening now in the podcast market and what opportunities I see. Thank you for the thumbs and hearts, by the way. I really appreciate that. Keeps me rocking and rolling. So number one, this is the big one. Here's the number one reason. The podcasting market as a medium is at the beginning of a growth wave. The market has been open and available for the past 10 years, over a decade. So it's a maturing, or if not mature, platform. It's not a brand new platform. It's not a flash in the pan social media channel. It's not a new marketing gimmick, for example. We're talking podcasting as a maturing or mature platform, but it's on a growth wave. It's just about to launch into a growth wave. Currently, it's growing over 20% per year on year. What does that mean? Growing 20%. It means the number of people who are listening to podcasts each year are growing 20% plus year on year. That's a double-digit growth rate. So if you're thinking, where are the audience for your business or your market right now? Think about it. In what medium are you using right now, which is adding 20% plus to your audience year on year? Podcasting is an opportunity for you. In the US, there's over 60 million listeners. In fact, the last study I saw said there were 67 million listeners, regular listeners in the United States listening to podcasts. In the UK, we're a little way behind. We're 10% of that, just over 6 million people, but still 6 million people, even as a small number in the UK listening to podcasts. So again, part of our goal today is to raise the awareness of podcasting, see if we can increase that number a little bit today, even if just by one person. Hopefully we'll see this or listen to this and decide to take up listening to podcasts. But it's growing 20% year on year. And what the reality is here as well, despite its growth rate, it's still an unsaturated marketplace. There's just over 250,000 podcasts that are currently live on iTunes. And think about that versus the millions and millions of blogs out there on Google. You type into Google blogs, boom, look how many responses you get. There's a lot of websites and blogs out there. And you think about video. Look at YouTube. There's thousands of videos uploaded every single minute on YouTube. So these platforms are very mature, very saturated, whereas podcasting is a growth market in an unsaturated market. So there's plenty of room for growth. So yes, it's still competitive like any medium is right now. The digital world has made it hyper competitive. However, there is more opportunity on podcasting than any other method or means right now. So where there's less competition, there's opportunity for growth. And here's a really interesting fact as well. So I can't show you on my phone right now because I'm broadcasting through it, but I subscribe to around about 20 podcasts, and of which I listen to 3 to 4 regularly. I'm a regular listener to 3 to 4, maybe 5 podcasts. But on average in the marketplace, the average subscriber subscribes to 5 to 6 podcasts. So think about that in comparison to, say, on Facebook, where, if you're a business owner like me, I'm sure you're constantly subscribing to other different people's pages to keep up to date what's relevant in your industry, to see what's happening, to follow your favorite people you're learning from. And think about how many pages you've liked on Facebook. Think how many pages you've liked. And if you want to find that out, there is a way you can do that via the settings on Facebook. Compare that with, you're probably looking at minimum of 10 if you're an infrequent Facebook user. If you're an avid Facebook user, you've probably got hundreds, if not thousands of pages you've liked and you're receiving updates on your timeline. Compare that with podcasting, where the average listener has subscribed to 5 to 6 podcasts. So again, imagine that you're an expert, or you're a subject matter expert or thought leader in your field, and your audience is listening to maybe 5 podcasts. that seriously reduces the competition and noise. You go on Facebook, they're following 20, 30, 40, 50, hundreds of people. They're learning from lots of different people. This is your audience. Versus if you get them as a subscriber onto your podcast, then the chances are they're only listening to a handful of other podcasts to get their perspective. So there's a real opportunity, not only in terms of the growth of the market, but in terms of the competition. You've got a real opportunity to stand out amongst the crowd. Plus, on the final point here on the market growth, there is millions of pounds and dollars and euros and every currency around the world being plowed into podcasting right now, specifically around networks. There is an unprecedented level of investment into podcasting this year. Unprecedented. If you go and look at Google, if you go and search for investment into podcasting 2017, there's millions being invested into podcasting, both in terms of podcast networks, to really like a traditional radio network, but also in terms of major brands who are now investing in their own podcasts. Just a month ago, I think Jaguar, Land Rover launched their own podcasts. Major sports networks are launching their own podcasts. It's a real growth market right now. 2017 is the year to start a podcast. So that's reason number one. You're entering at the point of growth. You're entering at that tipping point when a market begins to really accelerate. So you don't want to miss that wave. The wave is beginning to build. It's been building for a long time. It's been a slow builder, but this is the year the tipping point is coming. So if you want to take advantage of that wave, 2017 is the time to get your show live, because 2018 is going to be a busy, busy year for podcasting. Number two. All right, so hopefully I've sold you on the value of the market. Number two, audience building. Audience building. For me, like I said, I went from a standing start to reaching over 100,000 people in less than 12 months. I'd been in business for 3 years before that, and I barely reached 100. I could almost count the people I reached on my hands. I reached hundreds of people as opposed to hundreds of thousands of people. So in 12 months, I've gone from reaching hundreds of people to hundreds of thousands of people. It's a massive, massive jump. Chris says tips for getting podcast sponsors. I'll come to that, Chris. I'm going to be talking about sponsorship and the opportunity in terms of sponsorship in 2017 and beyond. So if you're looking to reach more people with your message, your products, your services, if you're an expert in your field, you're a thought leader, you're a coach, you're a consultant, and you want to reach and help more people, podcasting is such a great way to reach your audience. But not only that, it's a great way to reach an educated and affluent audience. Typically, studies have shown that podcasters are educated individuals, they're affluent, they're high spenders. And also, if you're reaching a young audience, the millennials, 44% of the podcast listeners are millennials. It's the next growth wave of market. So massive global exposure, great for audience building. So if you've got a message to share, you've got products and services to share, podcasting is such a good method for doing that. Number three, not only in terms of the scale and size of the audience, in terms of building your audience, number three, you've got an opportunity to really deepen the connection with the audience. So on average, someone who listens to podcasts in the UK listens between 5.5 and 6 hours per week. 5.5 to 6 hours per week. And if you've got the lion's share of that time in the ears, you're really going to think about it. If you're listening to someone, like just now, if you're watching live or you're listening to this podcast, even for 5-10 minutes, you're going to feel like you know me a little better by the way I communicate. Imagine listening to, someone who you respect and admire for 5-6 hours in a week. You're going to feel like you know the person intimately. So in terms of building your personal brand and building that connection with your audience, if someone's listening to you for 5 to 6 hours per week, you're really going to start building an unconscious relationship with those individuals. So it's a great way to build a deeper connection with your audience. Facebook Live like this, it's great. You can do short videos, you can have quick impact, but with longer form content, and you're listening to repeat content over multiple touch points over the course of a week, you can really, really create a deep impact. And it's been amazing for me. Every time I meet someone who's been a listener to the show, I've been listening to you for the last 6 months. It's so strange to see you in person and meet you. I feel like I know you. I know your voice, and it gives you that opportunity. It gives you that opportunity to really, share your story and build that kind of connection. And finally, on the audience connection piece here, for example, Facebook Live, I can already see. Because Facebook has now upgraded the system, so I can see who's listening, I can see who's watching, I can see who's commenting, and I can see that people are dipping in, dipping out, they're tuning in, tuning out, come back, come in, come out, come in, come out. Lots of different people are touching the video, but they're not watching the whole video. All right, podcasts, 85% of podcast listeners the whole way through. the whole way through. So if you're recording a 15 to 30 minute podcast or a 45-minute podcast, studies have shown, and I'll touch more about data in a bit, studies have shown that people are listening, 85% of podcast listeners are listening to the entire episode, versus this Facebook Live where, people are seeing it on their timeline, they're jumping in, they're jumping out, they're jumping in, they're jumping out. It's flash in the pan. It's not that depth of connection. Well, you'll get that of a podcast. Next, number 4, mobile lifestyle. We live in a mobile world right now. It's one click to listen to a podcast. You can take it wherever you go. It's convenient for listeners to consume content. I listen in the gym. I listen on my way to the office. I listen whilst I'm ironing. I listen whilst I'm gardening. I just listen wherever I can. I'm an auditory learner. I love listening to audiobooks, and podcasting brings a whole new dynamic. And as I said, the relationship building piece, I get to feel like I really get to know the person behind the brand when I'm listening to a podcast. It's super convenient. The mobile lifestyle really plays into the hands of that. Most people on the planet now have a mobile phone. So if you're looking for how do I reach people, the mobile phone is the way to do it. And podcasting is going to play a big part. And by the way, that's from a listener perspective. From a content creation piece, right now I'm in a hotel room here. I'm about to go to a wedding after this. I'm doing this in celebration of International Podcast Day. If you've just joined us, today is International Podcast Day. We're celebrating podcasting. I'm in a hotel room here. This is mobile. I've recorded podcast episodes on the top of a mountain, having been on a cycling trip through the Alps. I was determined to get my podcast out. I managed to promote and publish my podcast from the top of a mountain using just my mobile phone. So not only is it a mobile lifestyle for the content consumer, but it's also a mobile lifestyle for the content producer. There's new tools and techniques available to really make it a really fully mobile platform. Number 5, content creation. So I've touched on a point in the creation process. It's a mobile creation process. The great thing about content creation on podcasts is you can create long form and short form content. So like I've said here on Facebook Live, it's very good for short videos. The stats will show that people have, the engagement rate varies. The shorter the video, the higher the engagement. Podcasting gives you the opportunity to create both short and long form content. And it gives you the opportunity of repurposing content. So if I did a video here on Facebook, I can put it out as a podcast. If I did a video on YouTube, I can put it out as a podcast. If I create a blog, I can transcribe it. I can take the transcript and record it as a podcast. It's a great way to take your existing content and repurpose it via a different platform. Plus, the content itself, it's easy to find the content on podcast platforms. It's like the Netflix of radio. Many people haven't realized this. So it's a great platform for both the listener and the content creator. Number 6, credibility. Credibility, because there is a perceived barrier to entry, like writing a book, for example. Becoming an author is still seen as like the holy grail of developing credibility. Being a best-selling author is the badge that people like to wear as the ultimate form of credibility. But podcasting is a very similar appeal in terms of its credibility, because there is this perceived barrier to entry in the same way there is to writing a book. Many people say I'd love to write a book, but I just don't know how. The same is true of podcasting. It still has that credibility when it comes to, you say, I'm a podcast host. Oh wow, that's amazing. It's got that credibility piece. It's got that positioning piece as a tool in itself. However, where it also has a heightened level of credibility is if you're running an interview show, you're connecting and building relationships with influencers and thought leaders in your field, your industry, you're then being positioned alongside those high-level influencers, and I call it credibility by association. You're building your credibility by the people you surround yourself with, not only in terms of a perception piece from your audience, but actually think about this from your business perspective. Many thought leaders out there, personal development leaders will say, you are the product of the environment that you surround yourself within. So the 5 people you spend most time with are the people you become. Building a podcast gives you the opportunity to seriously increase the quality of your network. I've had the real pleasure and honor of spending quality time with some amazing people via the podcast. So, not only do you have the credibility from the actual positioning piece of having a podcast on iTunes, there is some kudos for doing that, but also the relationships you're building with other influencers is imperative. Number 7, this is a big one. It might not sound sexy, but it is. It is. Number 7 is data. If you're serious about growing your business, you're serious about building a brand, you need to know your numbers, you need to know the metrics. Any professional brand out there is paying attention to the numbers. Especially when you're marketing your business, you want to know where you're getting your biggest return on investment. You want to see what's working, what's not working. Data is what gives us the answer. The good news is, after years of requests, Apple is now leading the way in terms of analytics for podcasts. You're going to see some amazing new statistics available on Apple from podcast about podcasting. So as a podcast host, you're going to know. Right now, I can tell you how many listeners I've got approximately. I can tell you how many subscribers I've got approximately. I can tell you where they're listening from. But in the future, I'm going to be able to tell who listened, when they listened, how long they listened for. And that data is really, really valuable because, say, for example, I do a podcast episode on topic A and 50% listen halfway through, and I do an episode on topic B and it hits 90% listener completion engagement rate, then it's telling me, okay, that's an important topic that people are resonating with. So that deeper level of data from a content creation perspective is going to enable us to create really high quality, targeted content. But also in terms of planning, it's going to enable you to plan at a high level. But those analytics will be really, really important in understanding who your audience is, where they are, and how to market to them deeper and more effectively. You can have a much more clearer picture of how you can connect with that ideal audience. But also, if you're going to use advertising and sponsorship, you can leverage that data. You know, say you're a major brand, say you've got a technology podcast, and all of a sudden you've got listeners who are this age range, living in this country. This is their typical audience demographics, like you can with Facebook Insights. If you had that level of analytics and insights, imagine you're trying to get a high-level sponsor for your show, and you go with that data about your show, showing the engagement rate, showing the listenership, showing the subscriber rate. That's very, very powerful to leverage high-quality deals for your podcast in terms of sponsorship. It's just an amazing tool for us as business owners and marketers to have that data to be able to shape our content and shape our revenue streams around our audience. Monetization is number 8. Chris asked me tips of getting podcasts on podcast sponsors. Let me just talk a little bit about the opportunity of sponsorship. I don't personally use sponsorship right now, but there is certainly the opportunity to do that for all podcast hosts. Sponsorship is going to be changing in a big way in 2017 and beyond, including what's called dynamic advertising. So that means right now, if you say you put an advert into your show as at the front end of your episode, you do your introduction, and then you say a word from our sponsors, and there's an advert play, or you talk through a sponsorship piece that you've created with your sponsorship partner. That's the same advert whether you listen to it now or in 10 years' time. But dynamic adverts are going to enable you to strategically insert adverts into your podcast, which you can dynamically update. So say today you're listening to this and we did a commercial break right now, and I talked about, Scalini Prosecco. Like I said, I'm at a hotel ready for a wedding. And then tomorrow I could change the advert to talk about, say, Nescafe coffee. By the way, these are not brands I necessarily endorse or recommend. They just happen to be here in the hotel. But you get the piece here. So right now, if you do an advert in your podcast episode, the advert will stay the same throughout all time. But coming up is this dynamic advertising piece where advertisers can actually change the advert, or you can change the advert in real time. So that means if you're listening to episode 101 today, you'll hear one advert. You could, in 5 years' time, go back and listen to podcast episode 101 and play a completely different advert in the same podcast without any editing. Incredible technology coming up for advertisers. And of course, when advertising technology is available for advertisers, what happens? You get a massive influx of people looking to invest in the platform. So dynamic adverts are coming. Geo-targeted adverts are coming. So if you have a business that relies on a local geographic area, you're going to be able to use advertisers or yourself. You're going to use geo-targeted adverts where you can actually advertise your business in a local area using a podcast. Using these new analytics and data that's going to be available. This is just mind-blowing stuff. This is transformative technology when it comes to audio, because even in radio, this kind of stuff's not available. So this is really, really powerful digital technology coming into podcasting. It means that advertising will be evergreen. There's already $220 million a year in advertising revenue produced through podcasting. So sponsorship is a massive opportunity for podcasters. Now, I've stayed away from it from now due to the listener experience. But if you think about listening to radio, watching to television, because of the digital technology, adverts are becoming much more creative, much more innovative. and they're actually much more experiential. You can actually create really high quality sponsorship adverts now, which don't interrupt the broadcast in the same way as it may have done a year ago. So right now I've avoided advertising and sponsorship in my show because I believed it to disrupt the listener experience. There are some shows I listen to and it just drives me nuts. The first 5 minutes are advert. I didn't tune in for that, but you can be a lot more elegant, and the new tools that are going to be available to you are going to make things much more smart. And I'm working on a concept myself where I want to start including adverts, but doing it in a way where I only recommend products that I use, know, like, and trust, where I can actually share real life experiences of using such products in an advertorial type fashion. So there's going to be all kinds of different ways that you can use sponsorship in the future. But in terms of getting sponsorship, the new data that's coming out is going to give you a real leverage point with advertisers. So there are a number of different ways that you can get sponsorship, and I'm no real expert in this, having not used sponsorship myself. But through some of the hosting platforms you use right now, if you host your podcast on one of the major platforms like Libsyn or Podbean, some of the major platforms out there have ad networks built into the host platform, so you can actually access those ad networks and seek sponsorship that way. Of course, the classic mode of direct approach, you can approach relevant companies in the industry that you operate within to talk about the opportunity of sponsoring on your show. That's the classic way of building relationships and forming a network to actually go to the market yourself. But there's also ad agencies out there who are specialists in the podcasting field, and they kind of act as a brokerage service in terms of finding those opportunities that are relevant to your show. They act as an intermediary between advertisers and podcasters in the digital space. So there's lots of different ways to get podcast sponsors. I would begin by thinking about how you want to use sponsorship in your show, and if you want to use sponsorship, and from there really think about the brands that you would actually want to align yourself with. There's so many podcasts I listen to, like I said, where the advertising is OTT, it's over the top, but there's also podcasts out there where I listen to the adverts and that it's not relevant to the content. I was listening to a business podcast recently, it started talking about beds, mattresses, and I thought, no, it doesn't really fit. And, if the episode was about sleep or, productivity or energy, it makes sense. It makes sense to talk about those kind of things, but to have a repeat advert talking about mattresses and beds, to me, it just wasn't aligned with the message of the podcast. So think about who and what type of content you'd want to have in terms of sponsorship. There's lots of tools out there. So monetization right now is a massive opportunity through sponsorship. But again, it's an amazing opportunity to promote your products and services. It's not a sales platform. It's not like a webinar where you'll do a hardcore sales pitch at the end, but it's a great way to position your services, your products, as well as using other methods like sponsorship to gain monetary gain and increase your revenue streams. Number 9, coming up to the last 2. If you're just joining today, this is the International Podcast Day celebrations. We are celebrating podcasting. We want to get as many people listening to podcasts as possible. And in my personal goal, to help as many entrepreneurs to become podcast hosts if they choose to do so this year. And we're just talking through the top 10 reasons why this year is the best year to start a podcast. The final 2 here. So number 9 is connected devices. We're talking about technology improvements. Right now, Apple, Android, Google, Amazon, they're all developing their platforms for podcasting. Spotify are investing heavily into podcasting. Google's investing heavily into podcasting. So Apple are developing CarPlay, which means that you'll be able to listen to your favorite podcasts in all new cars. And you'll actually be able to upgrade your sound system to include Apple CarPlay, so you can listen to your favorite podcasts on the move. Android are doing the same through Android Auto. And in the home, Google Home and the Amazon Echo, they're going to be centered around audio. So there's going to be lots of different tools and resources for podcasters within those new home-based devices. And that's a massive growth market in itself. So your distribution channel is massively expanding beyond just mobile technology. We're talking in vehicles, we're talking in home. This is a huge opportunity to reach an audience on a broad scale. Number 10. The final one, it's damn fun. Podcasting is fun. I got my mic right here. I love rocking the mic. For some people are natural on video. Some people are natural connectors. But other people, they don't like it on the screen. They prefer to, be behind the screen as a blogger or through audio. Rocking the mic is just damn well fun. If you like doing video, we talked about repurposing content. You can repurpose content through video and through the podcast. You can do the two in combination. So those are the top 10 reasons to start a podcast in 2017. To recap, number 1, it's a market on a growth wave. Number 2, it's great for audience building. Number 3, you build a deeper connection with your audience. Number 4, It's the mobile lifestyle, one click to listen. You can take it anywhere you go. Number 5, it's great for content creation. Number 6, it's incredible for developing your credibility and your positioning. Number 7, the new data is going to be incredible for podcasters. Number 8, monetization through sponsorship and promoting your products and services is a great way to actually increase your revenue streams. Number 9, connected devices, in-home, in the car. There's a massive distribution channel there waiting for you for your business to capitalize upon. And number 10, it's just much fun. So that is the top 10 reasons to start a podcast in 2017. If you've got any questions at all about starting your own show, then I am your man. And plus, right now, I'm looking to help a number of people to start their own show in 2017. I've created a program called the Rock Your Podcast Bootcamp. A number of people are currently going through that with me right now, a small handful of people to develop their own podcasts, several due to launch before the end of this year, which is really exciting. So if you would like to launch your own show in 2017, then I would love to play a part in helping you to do that. So the Rock Your Podcast Bootcamp, like I said, it took me 4 months to learn how to start a podcast. I'm going to shortcut that process for you. I've created a 4-week bootcamp which runs through everything from creating your show concept to recording your episodes, to editing, publishing your episodes, to getting featured on iTunes, getting your podcast in all the major publishing directories, how to market and promote your podcast and how to monetize your podcast, how to get great interviews with amazing guests. Every step you need to take to launch, grow, and monetize your podcast in under 4 weeks. The reason I say 4 weeks, I set it up in a way so you can watch one short video every single day for 4 weeks, and everything will be walked through, with tutorials, walkthroughs, video. You'll be able to see every single step you need to take to launch your own podcast. If you want to do it in less time, you can. If you're an achiever, you want to go through it in 2 days and get your podcast out there, you can do that. But it's designed to get it done in 4 weeks. Not only do you get the course content where I'll be sharing exactly step-by-step how to start your podcast show, but you'll have 4 weeks of group support from me and my other podcasters in the network. So it's a great way to get real feedback, real tangible support, and every step you need to take to launch your own show. So if you'd like to launch your own podcast, then I encourage you to join the Rock Your Podcast Bootcamp with me. It's just £300 to do that. It's incredible value. It's as far as I can see, it's one of the best quality programs out there. One of the best quality prices. I'd love to help you start your own show. Podcasting is relatively inexpensive, so it's not going to add a lot of cost to the overall investment required to start a show. So if you'd like to start a podcast show, then please do head over to rockyourpodcast.com. You'll see all the details there. There's a short video explaining in more detail what's included, and there's just a button below the video to get enrolled and get started. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening today on the International Podcast Day special. I'm off to a wedding now. Really excited to go and celebrate with some friends and celebrate the International Podcast Day as well. So have a great day. Please do join us in the Share-a-thon. Go on to Facebook, Twitter, your favorite social media channels, and share your favorite podcasts. It's going to be a great day, and it's all about raising awareness and helping share the great work that has been done out there by other podcast hosts. So thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for watching on Facebook Live, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Until next time, go out there, unleash your greatness, build your empire, make your impact, and live your ultimate life, because you, my friends, are unstoppable. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.